Perhaps this is due to living continuously with flesh, textures, objects, and not merely with ideas, abstractions, complexes. Often they are mimes or storytellers, and nearly always good cooks. The writer, on the other hand, is so often pale, awkward, incompetent in everything except the business of putting words together. For one writer like Blaise Cendrars, who sucked the marrow of life, there are 1,000 who never left their bird cages, who write about life without ever living it. There are painters, too, of course, whose world is circumscribed, who never leave their native village, but they are the exception rather than the rule. Even Utrillo, who was definitely not a worldly man nor a traveled man, might be said to have led an adventurous life. When, in the closing years of his life, he sequestered himself in the suburban town of La Vézinay, there to live with his birds and to pray each day in the chapel installed in the garden, even then it was more of a life than many writers I know enjoy. He communed with the creatures of the air and with God. Now and then he slipped, spent the night in a ditch with the bottle. What matter? Je suis comme je suis fait comme ça, as Juliette Greco chants. He was true to himself, to the cobbled streets of the suburbs, to their milk-white walls, and the strange hoydenish figures whom he encountered in his imaginary walks. We do not have to read his biography to know that he lived intensely, that he wrestled with the demons, John Barleycorn above all, that he learned to love even such inanimate things as walls, windows, paving stones, iron bars. By contrast, I think of our Nathaniel Hawthorne, a typical isolated figure in the world of men and letters. I think of his encounters with Melville, particularly of the imaginary ones described by Journoud in Pour Saluer Melville. No matter how sad and dreary Utrillo's life may have been, it was a garden of roses compared to the desert in which Hawthorne moved. Yes, to paint is to love again, live again, see again. To get up at the crack of dawn in order to take a peek at the watercolors one did the day before, or even a few hours before, is like stealing a look at the beloved while she sleeps. The thrill is even greater if one is first to draw back the curtains. How they glow in the cold light of early dawn. Another hour or two, and they will already have lost some of their gleam and sparkle. Coming on them by surprise this way, they give the impression of having slept all night with their eyes open. Is there any writer who rouses himself at daybreak in order to read the pages of his manuscript? Perish the thought. Another thrill, almost as great as catching the sleeper awake, is to see one's work matted and framed. Suddenly the paintings assume another fuller, richer character. Properly dressed, they are now ready to visit the Queen or any high dignitary. Comes the problem how and where to show them to full advantage. There never is enough wall space, alas. Only once in my life did I have the pleasure of seeing a cluster of my watercolors hanging side by side in one room. They were most handsomely decked out, too, I must say. That was chez Leon Shamroy. 25 of them at once. It took my breath away. But, one may ask, didn't you ever have an exhibit? Yes, a number of them. But in a gallery or museum, one's paintings never create quite the same effect as in a private home. They become self-conscious, knowing that they are going to be analyzed and criticized beyond endurance. Often I have toyed with the thought of erecting a covered gallery from the living quarters below to the studio above where I work, which means traversing a flight of steps through the garden. Tripping back and forth, protected from the elements, I would thus have the added pleasure of glancing at my own work. Undoubtedly, it would improve my writing, improve my appetite, improve my domestic relations and my intercourse with the neighbors. It might even lead to installing a private chapel in the garden, a la Utrio, where each day at dawn or twilight I would offer up a prayer to the matters, the lakes, the cobalts, the alizarans, the chromes, and the oxides, or intone a psalm to the memory of Paul Klee, John Marin, the immortal Turner, or the beloved Douanier Rousseau. The pity of it is that so few of us are privileged to live with our paintings. Either they have to be shelved in a closet or given away. One is lucky if now and then he can sell one for a song. Think what it would mean to be able to review the work of a lifetime at will. Which reminds me that no matter how small the room he occupied, Reichel always had at least a dozen of his watercolors on the walls. The moment you stepped into his room, you were at home. They greeted you like old friends. What's more, the younger ones never jostled the older ones. Each kept his place, his true demeanor, his longueur d'onde. As with writing, I find, so with watercolors. The best are those which are never committed to paper. They are the ones you come home with after a walk in the hills or a stroll through some picturesque quarter of a strange city. Or it may be the sea at sunrise, with a white, ghost-like ship cutting the horizon line, and the mountains, too drugged with the magic of light, sprawled out like ravishing, dew-drenched sluts. One of the reasons why it is so difficult to record such moments, such scenes, is because one has taken in too much at one breath. To make a painting, you will be told, one has to select. Never bite off too much. But Rousseau, to name but one, often did just that, did he not? Could there be more of jungle than there is of jungle in a Rousseau jungle? To my mind, some of the most exciting paintings we have are precisely those in which everything has been crowded, everything stated. If I were able to do this sort of thing, I would. Which explains why I never paint from nature. If I did, I would still be working on the same canvas. Haven't you noticed in life classes that there are some who are never able to squeeze in the head or feet? They are thinking life-size, no doubt, and not canvas-wise. On the other hand, there is that wonderful painter, Berliuk, who makes human figures hammered down to a size disproportionate to the room, the animals, or the trees that go with them. An astonishing effect, much more exciting to me than the El Greco obsession of elongating the figure, or the Modigliani trick of stretching the neck. All of which is by way of saying that questions of proportion, dynamic symmetry, pink shadows or black ones matter little. What counts is the result. A painting of Chagall's may oblige you to stand on your head, but it doesn't destroy your appetite, nor does it ruin your equilibrium.